it's Ella
and Alexa.
and today we are going to be filming a part 2 of my top 10 series. I don't know if you remember, but a few months back I did a top 10 favorite shows video with my friend Olivia, and me and Alexa are back and we're going to do our top 10 favorite roles. So I'm going to start out with my number 10, and my number 10 is the role I'm currently playing, Paulina in The Seagull. This is my 10th favorite role because I just love Paulina so much. I think she's a really complex character. I haven't played a lot of characters with love interests, and I have 2 in this show, so I think that's really special. And I love my double Cassidy. I've loved getting to work with her in this show, and it has just been a fantastic experience. So yes, that is my number 10.
My number 10 is Linus in You're a Good Man, Charlie Brown, and that was a long time ago. But I thought that role was so fun, and I was a lot younger than I am now, so that was a fun role to play. I got to have a lisp, which I've never had to do before, and yeah, my brother was an intern for that show, so it was Fallon, so that was so fun, and yeah, I loved that role.
My number 9 is Marcia, which is the role I played in The Outsiders. And The Outsiders is one of my favorite shows I've ever done, but I really liked Marcia because I got to be doubles with someone who's a lot older than me. She was 18 at the time, and I was 12, I think. And it was just a really fun role to play, being like Cherry's like side woman. I've never had a lot of like best friends on stage, and so that was like one of the only times that I've gotten to actually connect with someone on stage as like a best friend, and so that was like really special for me, and is my 9th favorite role.
My 9th favorite role is Curly in OG Peter Pan, and I was actually Ella's double in that show.
What?
We had met like just before that, so that was a super fun time, and OG Peter Pan is like a legend, so that was a really fun show, and yeah, I loved playing Curly.
My number 8 is Turtle. I loved Turtle. Turtle was in Frog and Toad, which is a show I adored so much. I loved it. And I thought Turtle was such a fun role because obviously musicals are obviously my favorite thing like ever. Like, not really, but yes. And I don't know what I'm talking about. I love musicals, but like, yes. And Turtle was probably the largest female part in that show because Snail was like unisex. But I loved it, and my Get a Load of Toad song is one of my favorite musical numbers I've ever been in. It was so fun to sing. It was so fun to dance. It was a small, intimate cast. It was just such a fun role, and my double Madeline Carter is like amazing. I like admire her so much. I think she's so awesome, and yeah, I love Turtle. She's such a fun role.
My 8th favorite role is Nelius in Mary Poppins. I thought that role was so cool. We had to do so much cool dancing, and yeah, Mary Poppins was such a fun show overall. And yeah, I think Miss Becca, our director, said it was one of her favorite musicals, so that was really fun to be a part of, and I loved being Nelius. It was so cool with the costume, and like being a statue was super cool, and I loved all the dancing, so that was so fun.
My number 7 was Wendy in Peter Pan Jr. I loved being Wendy. I was pretty young. I don't know how many years ago that was, 2 or 3. But it was my first lead, obviously. Oh wait, no. Was Charlotte before that? Was Charlotte's Web before Peter Pan Jr.? I don't think so. I think Wendy was my first lead. And so that was obviously unreal for me. I totally didn't expect it, especially as a singing lead. It was crazy, and I love Matthew, and so I loved working with him on that show. And Wendy is such a special role because Peter Pan is obviously one of my favorite stories, and getting able to play that role is a dream. And even though it was Peter Pan Jr., that role is like a dream role for me, and so getting able to play it was so cool, and yeah, I loved it. We're filming, please.
Are we on 7?
Yes.
Okay, my 7th was Captain Scott in Beauty and the Starcatcher. I loved playing Captain Scott. I feel like we were on stage for so long, like gagged, and we were literally sitting.
Be quiet, Cooper.
We were sitting on our knees, we were like,
guys, be quiet. Okay, keep going.
We were sitting on our knees for so long in the show, and it was a smaller role in Peter and the Starcatcher, but like being a part of that show and even having like a small role in it was still like a really big deal because that show was just so epic, and just to have a part in that show was so fun. And you know, apart from being Captain Scott, you get to be like multiple, like you can be like a Mullis, different parts of the island, and I love that show so much. And I mean, even that role wasn't like the biggest role I've ever had. It was still a really cool experience.
Okay, my number 6 was the Queen of Hearts. I loved the Queen of Hearts. It was so fun to just be like girly, but still like regal, and like I could still have like that deep voice because she was like mean, and like it was so cool. And I loved being able to just completely take a whole character on that role because I didn't have to worry about like realism, and usually a lot of my roles are driven by realism, and I have to make sure I'm being realistic all the time. But Queen of Hearts was just such an over-the-top character that I could just like do it and be in it, and it was so cool. And like I love Ariana so much, and being her double was such an amazing experience. And yeah, that role is so fun. Queen of Hearts is one of my favorite roles ever. So that is my number 6.
My number 6 is Violet in Willy Wonka, and I loved playing Violet. She was so cool. She had like sass, and I loved that show so much because that was the last show Miss Becca had at PCT, and so that was like a big deal. And I loved the cast. We were all so close, and I loved playing Violet. I loved singing to it. It was so fun. I just love that role so much.
My number 5 was Charlotte in Charlotte's Web. I loved being Charlotte. I thought she was such a sweet character, and I had to work on my delicacy because I'm obviously not very delicate, and so it was a bit of a challenge for me, which I thought was so great. And once again, working with Matthew, Matthew is like my BFF, so I love working with Matthew, and so that was so fun. And yeah, she was just so graceful, and it was my first time being doubles with Olivia, and so that was crazy because I'd always like admired Olivia and never imagined that I'd actually like get on her level. And so I was so thrilled to be in that, and that was one of my first photo shoots, and I just loved the costume. I was wearing this like Masha-esque black dress, and it was so cute and so fun, and I had these like spiderweb eyes, and just I loved that role, and I loved that show, and I loved her voice, and it was just prime time.
My 5th favorite role is Miss Who in A Wrinkle in Time. That role was so much fun because I got to speak in all these crazy languages, and it was like kind of hard to memorize them, but like it was fine because it just sounded so cool, just being able to say them so fluently. And I love being a witch because you were so different. That character is unlike anything I've ever played before. Like being like a witch with Elizabeth and Isabella, it was just so fun. We were all so close, and that show was incredible. Oh my gosh, I loved Wrinkle. The cast was so close, and being in Gigi's theater, oh my gosh, it was just, those were just like the days. It was so fun, and I loved being Mrs. Who.
My number 4 is Roger in Lord of the Flies. I loved being Roger because I'm a really bad boy, and that was like one of my first time, well, that was my first time getting a lead as a boy, and I never thought I would do it like ever. I was not, no. But I got to do it, and Hannah is so amazing, and I've always admired Hannah and thought she was like the most talented actress ever, and working with her was such an experience, and getting to really be that mean boy and having that voice, because I can do a British accent, but I'd never done like a boy British accent truly, and like just being mean, and I could be in it the whole time, and like because he was so mean, I could really choose that character and like know what I was feeling. And a lot of the parts in the show where you'd have to have an expected emotion, Roger was always the character who got to have the opposite emotion, and I thought that was so cool to play with and so cool to think about. So Roger was definitely my number 4 favorite role.
My number 4 is White Rabbit in Alice in Wonderland. Oh, I loved playing White Rabbit. That was such a special role for me, I think, because that was when I think that I was really and truly a character. Like, I felt like up till that point, I was always like an actor, just like saying the lines and doing the like emotion, like kind of, but that was the role that I really felt like I was like the White Rabbit. And I think that was just like, I just felt something different that I hadn't felt in my past shows, and that role just meant so much to me, and I loved being in Alice with Jordan. She was my Alice, and Brayden as Mad Hatter. That was so cool, and I just loved being in that show. That was a really special role for me.
My number 3 was Catherine in Radium Girls. I loved Catherine. I thought she was such a heart-wrenching part, and once again, getting to be best friends on stage with someone is like so special, and getting to share that with Chrissy meant so much to me, and I love that connection, and it's so sad, but it was so realistic, and realism is like my favorite thing. Like, being a real person is definitely my favorite kind of character, and so getting to be her and play with the emotion and having the bandage, even though that like seems like a minor part, it was actually a big part to think about how that would feel like, and now to have that like decaying in your mouth, how to like think about that, and how it started so innocently with just the paintbrushes, and getting to do that and live that every single show was so crazy and felt so real. And like every time I was in that wheelchair, I was like, oh my gosh, like it's a true story too. So to think about that people like actually went through that, and I was representing like the essence of a real person who actually went through that, was even more realism on top of the realism, and it was just so good. It was so good, and yeah, I loved it so much. So that's my number 3.
My number 3 is Sour Kangaroo in Seussical. Oh my gosh, I loved being Sour Kangaroo. Just being able to wail on stage, like in every song I sung, was so fun. And like getting to be like mean to Logan was so funny, because I don't know, he's like my BFF. I love Logan, and I loved being on stage with him. And oh, that show was just so cool. That was like, it was a weird kind of punky version of like normal Seussical, but I think our version was so cool. And oh my gosh, that show was so awesome.
It was so awesome.
I just loved being the Sour Kangaroo. It was so much fun, and being doubled with Zoe, and Miss Gabrielle did an amazing job with our costumes.
So good.
It was so awesome. Oh, I loved Sour Kangaroo.
Following back up on my number 2 is Maisie in Seussical. I loved being Maisie. It was such an incredible role for me. I got to sing. I got to be a musical lead, which is crazy whenever I get to do that, because it's so cool. And I got to dance, and I was in like the front row, and it was wild. Because Miss Becca said I was the best at the bow dance. So it was obviously epic. And so I was living the whole time. And I got to share that song, Maisie in Palm Beach, with Bryce. And so it was obviously the best, because I love being on stage with Bryce. And that was so special. And Bryce was such an amazing cat. Oh my gosh. And I loved being in that show with him. And I loved being Maisie. And I loved being doubles with Fallon. And it was just so unreal. And the whole time, and it was like Seussical is such an iconic show, and the different twist we took on it was unreal, and it was so cool, and it was definitely the way that show needs to be played, and I am so unbelievably lucky to have been able to be in that and live through that, and it was definitely my number 2. I loved it so much.
Yeah, my number 2 is Masha in The Seagull, which is who I'm playing right now. Oh my gosh, this role has just been so incredible for me. I, again, have never played a role like this before. She's so complex, and she has all these different emotions, and she's like feeling something like different every scene, and she's like always depressed, but like it's not, she just acts different. She acts differently like because of her depression, and it's so cool. And Olivia, being doubles with Olivia, it's my first time being doubles with her. She's literally so elite. I love her so much. And this show is just, it's going to be so good.
It's going to be so good.
Man.
And we open next Friday, so if you want to check us out, we're on both Saturday shows, and the following weekend we're on Saturday night and Sunday matinee, and it's going to be so good. You need to see it.
Oh, but I love Masha so much. She's such an awesome character. I'm so happy I get to play her. Oh, so good.
Okay, my number one is obviously Meg in A Wrinkle in Time. I talked about this a lot already in my favorite shows. But being Meg was definitely the best experience of my entire life. I've never felt happier than that summer. That summer was such a high point in my life. I obviously got to work with Olivia, and we just worked so tirelessly months and months before audition to get that role, and getting the role was so surreal. And again, working in Gigi's was so cool. And just the whole process, getting to connect with a sibling on stage is something that I don't do very often. And that is crazy amazing, because you can actually pull from your emotions the connection you have to your sibling and play that on them. And that is so cool. And I got to work with Caden, and he was so nice, and he is so talented, and that was awesome. And I just loved it so much. And all the direction was incredible, and it was so fun, and the whole time was just so happy, and there was never a dull moment because it was always just there. And Meg is my favorite character. She was realistic, but was different because she's obviously very different from me in real life, and getting able to play that and live that and just be in that all the time, I really felt like I was her, and it was just so crazy, and it was the best experience of my life. So that was my number one.
My number one is Piggy in Lord of the Flies. That role was so special to me. I can't even explain it. I just felt so genuine and honest and exposed. And I mean, it was just such an incredible role. And I just remember on opening night, during my last monologue before Piggy dies, I just started crying, not because that was what I was practicing or not what I was trying to do. They just came just because I don't know, I just connected with Piggy so deeply, and it just the tears started flowing, and I just got super overwhelmed with all the emotion, and it just felt so real, and it was crazy. And working alongside Olivia, again, a queen, so elite, that show just was so special to me, and that was just an incredible summer. Everyone worked so tirelessly and so much just to be the best that they could be in that show, and everyone supporting, everyone, all four casts. It was just the most incredible experience I've ever gotten, and it was just an amazing opportunity. That was just the best, and that fat suit was crazy, but it was great. I loved being Piggy. Definitely my favorite role.
Thank you guys so much for watching. As you can see, Alexa and I's hearts are currently exploding. So much love. And this is a special time to film this because Thanksgiving is coming up. And I am so unbelievably thankful for Outcry and everything Miss Becca's done for me, and everything my friends have done for me, and all the friendships I've made this year, and all 6 shows I've done this year have been unreal. And I could not be more thankful. Yeah. So thank you. Bye.
Bye.